So I'm very excited to speak with you because this album, Love Made Me Do It, is coming out this month. And of course, people know you for all sorts of other things: makeup, tattoos, vegan activism, your reality show, LA Inc. But it all kind of started with music, right?
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised to realize that you have been doing this since like literally age 5, right?
Yeah. I started playing piano at the age of 5. I was classically trained. So, for me, classical music was kind of like well, it was a huge part of my upbringing and music in general. I've always loved music. So, yeah. I think a lot of people they kind of like expect people to, stay in their lane, which I always hate that term because I feel like when I look at artists like Salvador Dali, it's like that, he was known for his paintings, but he had cookbooks, he designed jewelry, he was into architecture and furniture, and he had a poetry book. So I feel like you don't have to be a one trick pony. You can do a lot of other things too. And I think when it comes to art, it's like pretty natural to be able to express yourself in more than one medium. But for me, music has always been my first and foremost biggest passion.
So I guess the obvious question would be, this album is your debut album. Why did it take this long? Did you ever have other attempts or other record deals or anything like that
No, I
before?
mean, I've sang on a bunch of my friends' records and have gone on tour with them and everything. But I actually wrote this album about 10 years ago, and I think just life got in the way of life, where I was so busy filming the show for a very long time, finishing out that contract. And then I went on a couple book tours and then launched a makeup line. And then it wasn't until I sold my makeup line a year and a half ago, with the intention of finally releasing this music and going on tour. And then obviously we all got locked down for a year and our worlds got turned upside down. So
Yeah.
we've kind of just been in like a holding tank for now. But now, it's exciting. We get to finally go on tour and release this long awaited album. So yeah.
So going back to the fact that you started classical training at age 5, when I was reading about your background, it seems like you kind of maybe fell out of love with music because of the kind of lessons you had or the kind of training. I imagine in classical music, it's very formal and
Yeah. No,
strict.
no, I mean, I've never fallen out of love. I think when you're little, you obviously like, well, I guess for me, I resented my parents because they were quite strict. And so, I would have to do 2 hours a day every day and to a timer. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, everybody else was outside having fun and having a normal life. And, you know, any kid would rather be playing than practicing music. But now I'm just so grateful that my parents were such disciplinaries because I don't think I would have had the discipline that I have now to, follow through on all the things that I do. And also, I think that's when I deeply fell in love with music was when I actually learned how to play. In the beginning, you don't know what you're doing and it's frustrating and it's like a very difficult video game of some sort. And then once you actually like, I remember when I played my first like sonata, like it was a 12-page, sheet music. And it was so much fun that I got to the end and it's like, okay, you just want to do this over and over again. So no, I mean, I don't think I could ever fall out of love with music. I can't imagine a life without it.
Yeah, I guess I meant fell out of love with playing it, but yeah,
Mm.
because of the fact that perhaps the joy was taken out of it because of the fact that it was so structured, maybe
Yeah.
became more of a chore
Yeah.
than.
I mean, I don't think in the beginning, I don't think any 5-year-old like wants to like dedicate their time to or that much time to music. But no, I think I quickly fell in love with it. And it's funny because my siblings, they were on the same regiment that I was, and they totally like fell out of it. Like they never stuck to music at all. And I'm the only one out of the three that really still plays music now.
So it's interesting when you mentioned that this record was written 10 years ago, which actually kind of makes a little more sense to me now that I know that timeline. Because, I read the lyrics, I got all the lyrics from
Yeah.
your publicist, and I was looking at songs like Vanish, for instance. And there's a lot of songs that, you tell me if I'm right about this, but a lot of lyrics that are about like feeling inadequate or maybe having like imposter syndrome or just like kind of self doubt and stuff. And honestly, with all you've accomplished, I'm like, why is Kat like, why would she feel this way? Look at all she's done with her life. Like, what does she have to doubt about herself? So, can you tell me about the place that you were at when you were writing these songs? Because
Yeah.
it
I
must have
mean,
been a different time in your life.
yeah, of course. I mean, I wrote those songs 10 years ago when I was like in I guess, a somewhat dysfunctional relationship with another musician who lived overseas. And we just had this like unrequited love scenario. And And basically that was the inspiration behind even writing to begin with. You know, he had written an album for me and sent it to my house with like a note on it that said, these are all the things that are easier sung than said. And so I sat down and I listened to the album, and I was just so moved by it that I was like, what better way to respond than with writing an album? So, you know, I wasn't just going to go and dive into songwriting, like not knowing what I'm doing. So I started writing with a lot of my friends who had a lot more experience in the music world, and helped me along the way. So yeah, I mean, you fast forward to now, I mean, I'm happily married, and you know, I have a beautiful son with my husband, and I don't really think about that guy at all anymore, you know, but I think that that's okay, because I think that music is like tattoos in the sense that they're landmarks in time, you know, and I'm sure I'll write the next album, and at one point I will have processed those feelings too. But to go back to what you were saying as far as like feeling vulnerable and stuff, I think it's love doesn't really care where you're at in your life, you know, like, or at least heartbreak doesn't. And I think that that's okay, you know. I think we got to go through that to get to the good stuff. But I definitely have grown a lot since I wrote those lyrics. You know, I don't feel as vulnerable or as pathetic as I felt back when I wrote it. And so that's a good thing. But I still enjoy singing the songs, and I still remember the sentiment. You know, I still feel them when I sing them.
Do you mind me asking who the musician is? I completely understand if you would
I'll
rather
never,
not say.
I'll never tell.
Is it someone somewhat famous? Like, was it like?
um, I don't know.
All
I
right,
mean,
I'm just
yeah,
curious. I'm
yeah,
curious. Well,
yeah.
has he heard this record, or did
I
you
don't know.
release
You
it?
know, I think initially, like I wrote this album specifically for him, and but you know, now I feel like the only reason I'm really releasing it is because I want to. I'm proud of the songs, and I think I owe it to my fans in a sense, because they've been so patient. They've been waiting for, you know, 10 years, and they've seen the entire process of like seeing snippets of little previews of songs and demo versions and stuff. So they're just like, finally, you know, and I'm just so grateful for their patience.
But is there, as you mentioned, you're happily married, your mom,
Mhm.
your husband
Yeah,
is a musician.
yeah.
Now that you're in such a different place in your life, is there anything that's weird or painful or just awkward about like
Mm,
revisiting something that's like from a whole other era of your life that's gone, that's
no,
past?
no. I mean, it'd be weird for you know, like if you think about sobriety, like there's musicians that get sober all the time that have written songs about addiction or drugs or drinking, and you don't necessarily stop playing those songs because you're in a different place. Like you could still tap into those feelings when you sing them. But you know, my husband and I, we joke around because he knows like who the songs are about, and you know, he's just like, oh, all those songs are about your cat. So I'm like, yeah, they're just all about my cat.
I love the video you did for Exorcism, which
Yeah,
ends, spoiler alert, with a, you know, at the climax of the video
yeah,
is like you're a cat on a throne,
yeah,
which
yeah. I
I
think,
endorse.
yeah, yeah, it's totally. I'm a crazy cat lady and proud of it. But yeah, people were expecting it to be like somebody at the end of the video waiting for me in this castle, and I kind of set it up to be like it could be some type of romantic, like, you know, figure. But I was like, who better to have than my cat Nietzsche?
So did your husband, who is in the music project Prayers, did he encourage you when, you know, when you finally were getting ready to actually make this record?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, my husband. I mean, the album was already done before we got together. I mean, we when we met, we really bonded on music. Actually, you know, he wanted me to sing on one of his albums and stuff. So he was already aware that I had an album done, and then I just hadn't released it yet. But he's like my biggest supporter in everything I do. You know, like. And he loves the songs, you know, he sings along to them, and he thinks like, you know, he's got his favorites and stuff. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I know that like, you know, he's got I mean albums under his belt, and I'm sure, you know, like some of them are about other people, and I just love him as a creative person. So we all have our past.
Absolutely. And it's great that he's so secure. It's obviously a
Yeah.
testament to the, you know, the foundation of your marriage. Are there any specific songs on Love Made Me Do It that like now when you listen to them, obviously again, they're snapshots of a
Yeah.
time, that you have any kind of epiphany about how you've grown or changed, or, you know, anything like that? Like now you're looking at those lyrics through the lens of what you
Yeah.
represent.
I think it was more, it's not that I have epiphanies when I listen to it, but like when I released like the single I Am Nothing, for example, seeing the response from fans and people who listened to it that were like, oh man, I know exactly how you feel. And I think that you know, I don't feel that way anymore. Obviously, I did when I wrote those songs, I was in a pretty lonely place, you know. So it's like my heart goes out to everybody that does relate to the music, or to the lyrics specifically. And yeah, because, you know, like I said, I don't feel that way anymore. I don't feel less than nothing, you know. And but I know what it feels like. If I can feel people feel less alone in any way, like I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Absolutely. So you have some pretty high profile and impressive collaborators on this record. One of
Yeah,
them, I mean, Peter Murphy's on this record. That's
yeah,
pretty, I mean, I'm a huge Bauhaus fan.
me
Please tell
too.
me how that came about. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I like to be in the same sentence with Peter Murphy, let alone be able to do a song with him is like a dream come true. I mean, Bauhaus and Peter Murphy's solo stuff has always been like a cornerstone of like my music growing up, and I'm still a huge fan. And I mean, I've gone to see him play on his last Bauhaus tours, or you know, maybe a couple of years ago.
I went
And
all 3 nights, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
It was
And
great.
you know, and he's still like, to me, I'm like, you know, there's a lot of musicians that I love them, and you see them now, you know, and they're from an you know, legendary acts and stuff, that when you hear Peter sing, like his voice is even better now than it ever has been. And just speaks to, I don't know, what an artist he is. But so yeah, so at the time when I was writing the album, I was living in a different house over in Laurel Canyon. I was neighbors with Danny Lohner from Nine Inch Nails, and so we were hanging out every day. And he had worked with Peter on a lot of stuff, and they were pretty close friends. And you know, Danny and I have like the same musical taste. We love a lot of the same bands, and passionate about, like, you know, certain sounds. And so he played me this old demo. It was in the demo form, where when he had recorded Peter for this song that had like wild lyrics to it. And I just thought, oh man, this is the most beautiful song I've ever heard. It was just his vocals along piano. And Danny said, hey man, this would make a really great duet, you know. So we called Peter and you know, asked him what he thought about making that song come to life, and he was really excited. And I don't think he knew me from like the TV shows or anything like that. He just he heard my voice and was like my singing voice, and he was like, oh, I love her voice, like she's a great artist. I'm like, oh cool. So that's one of the two songs on the record that I didn't write, because Peter wrote all the melodies and all the lyrics for that song. So I still really don't know what they mean, but you'd have to ask him. But it's one of those songs that it like transcends language, because you totally get it. Like when you're hearing it, you're like, oh, I get what you're talking about. Like I know what it is.
And then you worked with the badass Linda Perry, who I
Yeah.
adore and have interviewed multiple times. She's
Yeah.
awesome. And I can completely see how the two of you would mesh and
Yeah.
gel. Like, how did that come about? Were you friends before?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, we butted heads a lot too, but
I could see
yeah,
that too, to be honest.
yeah, yeah. I met her through tattooing her, I believe, and I tattooed her and her friends, and you know, I was always a huge fan of Four Non Blondes, and I love her voice. You know, she's got one of my favorite voices. And so then when it was really interesting when I announced to all my friends that I wanted to come out with music, everybody was so supportive and excited. I think they knew how passionate I have been about music, that they really believed in it. And so, you know, Danny started helping me write songs, and then Linda was just like so excited to work on something, because I also think she, you know, she does a lot of pop stuff. And I think when I came to her, she's like, oh cool, we can do something outside of my usual realm. And you know, it was one of those things where I was like, I just want to make beautiful music, so don't look at the clock, you know, like I'm not trying to you know, use a formula or anything. Like it's not about making a hit, it's just about making whatever we feel come to life. And so that was exciting for her. I think we ended up writing over like 22 songs together.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, some of which obviously made the album. And then yeah, and then, you know, like I was tattooing Dave Grohl one day, and I was telling him about the music I was making. He's like, oh, I want to play drums on, you know, live drums on some of the tracks. And so we're like, cool, let's just go over to your studio. And that's the one thing that's beautiful about LA, though. You know, you're really surrounded by a lot of great, amazing, talented people. And I've always felt very lucky to be my friend's biggest fan.
It sounds like when you, like you said, you came out saying you were going to do this, that people took you very seriously and
Yeah.
very respectful. They didn't see this as like a novelty project or a
Yeah.
vanity project. Was that a concern of yours, given the fact that you are famous for these other things?
No, you know, I think about that all the time, where it's like there's you know, some people, I think I was talking to Adam Carolla about it, because he was like, oh, you know, when I first found out you were making music, he's like, I just kind of rolled my eyes, and I was like, hey, I don't blame you for that, because like every time I ever see a celebrity saying they're going to come out with an album, it is a novelty, and it's almost like they're playing a part versus like actually like living it. And it's like, I don't know, there's like a lack of sincerity, I guess. But in my case, like I said, music was always number one for me. So I think that's why my friends took me seriously, because they knew I was serious about it. I was like taking the voice lessons and really, really like working on being the best version I could of myself. So yeah, and I deeply love music so much. So yeah, I think it was a kind of like hard to deny it. But yeah, I'm it's not my first time having to prove myself to people, so it's okay. I always think you just do your best and release quality things that you love and believe in, and if people like it, they will like it, and if they don't, that's okay. But at least there's no sacrificing integrity.
What do you mean by it's not the first time you've had to prove yourself? What were other instances where where
Well,
people
yeah, I
were
mean,
skeptical?
when I first got into tattooing, it wasn't like it is now. Right now it's like such a high percentage of tattooers are female. And when I was tattooing, I started when I was 14 and got into my first shop when I was 16. I'm 39 now. And it's like I was one of 3 female tattooers in all of the US.
Mhm.
And so, it was interesting. Sometimes, like, I never wanted anybody to get tattooed by me because I was a girl, and I always wanted my work to speak for itself. Or there would be times where it worked the opposite, where people didn't like give you the time of day because they just thought you were like a tattooer's girlfriend or something. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So, or anything I've done, even when written my books or when I started my makeup line, a lot of people are going to assume that you're just building a product and slapping your name on it and collecting a check. Whereas for me, it's like I write my own books, I test all my own formulas. Like I don't believe in licensing myself.
Yeah. Wait, did you say one of only 3 female tattooists in the whole US at that time?
At the time, I mean, there was probably like a few more, but as far as like the ones that were actually notable at the time, there
Wow.
wasn't any. It was like it was a biker industry. It wasn't there wasn't hipsters in owning tattoo shops.
What made you even think that you could do that as a career when you were only like 14, when there were so few examples of that in the real world? Like, what made you even
Yeah. I
pursue
mean,
it?
I was listening to a lot of punk rock music, and my friends were tattooing each other unprofessionally, out of their house. And I was always drawing. And so, I remember my friend at the time was like, oh, you should tattoo a misfit skull on me. And I was like, okay, not knowing what I was doing at all. And I just remember that first line. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't think career. I just think, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. It was very like intuitive. And for me, and obviously I had to unlearn a lot of the things that I was doing when I was, being super ghetto. But like, once I got into my first shop, like, it was like, it just became a reality, and yeah, and I loved it. And it wasn't like I was making a lot of money. You didn't do it for the money, because it's not like how it is now.
So, when you say you were listening to a lot of punk at that time when you were growing up, what bands were you getting into, especially any ones that you would say are an influence on your album that's coming out?
I think none of those bands are influenced by my music now. I mean, I think that like it's not to diss that genre, because I appreciate it for what it is. I mean, I obviously love the Misfits and all that, but like, a lot of the stuff that I was listening to was just so angry. And I don't I'm trying to word it without putting down the entire genre, but like I think when I discovered metal or graduated to metal, I was like, okay, I really can back this, because maybe it was the classical music background, but when I heard like scales, I was like, oh, this is the same, like this riff is a scale, it's like, okay, there's some technical aspect that I can aspire to. Whereas if you're just playing 4 chords and like, whining on stage, like that to me wasn't something that I wanted to be like, or, that I looked up to. I just thought it was cool. A lot of the punk bands that I listened to when I was younger was just like, I think I was an angry kid, or I wanted something to fight for. I think a lot of people in their youth are craving that. And so, I listened to a lot of like peace punk stuff like Crass and bands like that, but I spend zero time listening to that music nowadays. I still listen, I like more post-punk stuff. So I
Yeah,
love The
same here.
Cure, Susie and the Banshees, like Depeche Mode, and that whole world.
Bauhaus, obviously. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's very much my world too. I actually have a Robert Smith coaster
I love it.
for my goblet right here. So yeah,
Yes.
that's my favorite band of all time. Well,
Yeah.
I'm curious because you were mentioning at the beginning of this interview about how your parents were strict and you were
Mhm.
grateful for that. And we don't need to get into the Provo Canyon School stuff because you
Yeah.
put on a very long thing on your Instagram, which
Yeah. Yeah.
people can get, which I
Yeah.
encourage people to watch because it was very
Yeah.
touching, very
Oh,
brave.
thank you.
And it was like 20 minutes long. So
Yeah.
it's all out there. But in general, my understanding is, and this is something I think it happened to me to a much less traumatic degree. But when you start
Yeah.
to like weird music
Yeah.
or dress weird or
Yeah.
wear all black or whatever, your parents can
Yeah.
sometimes go overboard and
Yeah.
think and maybe overreact, over punish or over discipline.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious now, like how you look back, like what's your relationship when you look back at
Yeah.
the fact that you were
Like,
homeschooled?
I think too, I mean, I come from a different culture, a different country. So, my parents are from Argentina and I was born in Mexico. So when we moved to America, it wasn't like my parents were Americanized in any way. They didn't have a sense of pop culture or understanding of any of that stuff. And I don't fault them for freaking out. I think we lived in a very rural area where with not a lot of exposure to anything outside of what's normal in society or deemed normal at the time. And so, I think it's interesting. Like I remember when I shaved my head for the first time and they were more concerned about that than they were about the tattoos I was getting, and I was 14 years old at the time. And I think a lot of that was, it's just so in your face, and, they were like worried about what people at the church would think. And to them, they had these old stigmas around, any kind of counterculture that it was very scary for them. It's not like nowadays everybody's got piercings or tattoos or colored hair or whatever. It's like back then that really wasn't the case. Like there was like an underbelly of riffraff that was more associated with that. So I understood their fear. I just obviously think they could have gone about it a different way. But then again, as a mom now, I look, I write notes to myself of all the things not to do that I've learned from my parents. There's a lot of things that I would do the same as well, but I want to learn from those mistakes, and they grew up in a generation without the internet, and also in a generation of culturally that like didn't really believe in therapy or self-help, whereas I'm constantly looking for ways to find guidance, so I think parenting is probably a little bit easier now than the lack of support they had, so yeah, I don't know. I love my childhood. I think I had a great childhood. I think my parents made a huge mistake in sending me to a school, but that was under the guise that it was going to help me in a way that it didn't. And again, I don't think it's their fault or anything. But I think all those things shaped me, I think I wouldn't change it.
Well, it's the way I relate to, again, my
Yeah.
story is not nearly as extreme as yours, but I remember when I started like for instance, when I started liking The Cure,
Yeah,
instead of my parents, I think this kind of music saves people, whether,
of course.
that I think people probably, whether it was emo or
Yeah,
metal or,
yeah,
goth music or whatever, it's like, it saves a lot of kids. But my parents were concerned. They were like,
yeah,
I'm listening to the Pornography album by The Cure and they're like,
yeah,
Lindsay, are you okay? Like, and I'm writing poetry, like gothic
yeah,
poetry, and I show it to them, and instead of them being like, that's great. It's
yeah,
great. You're being creative. They're like, we're afraid. It was like the Suicidal Tendency song. We're afraid
yeah,
you're gonna hurt somebody. We're
yeah.
afraid you're gonna hurt yourself.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
I had that Sam Hain record, the Initium record, where they're all drenched in blood. And I used to hide that under my bed because I just didn't want, I'm like, I know my parents can't handle this. Like,
yeah. So I'm curious about your thoughts about the fact that music that is dark or has images that might be seen as scary or
Yeah.
depressing to other people is actually helps people like going
Yeah.
through what you were going through at age 14. It's actually not a bad influence. It's the opposite.
Sure. And I mean, this country specifically has a really hard time talking about the really hard subjects, like death. And that's something that maybe because of my profession in the world of tattooing, I've always felt very comfortable talking about it with people. I tattoo a lot of portraits of people who have passed away, loved ones, onto people and how much that meant to them. And most of the time people just want to be able to feel heard. And I think that the same thing to your point is that like music, like The Cure or whatever the darker side of Sears or whatever, there's something for everybody. I think pop music is very helpful and healing for some, and for people like us who like resonate a little more with like poetry or the feelings that reflect what we're feeling, like that's so crucial, like I love Hall and Oates, but that's not going to help me, like like I can't relate.
So, I mean, it must feel, I don't know if vindicating is the right word, but given the things you went through with maybe being misunderstood as a kid, you were able to forge this multi-hyphenate career, basically being weird, having a lot of tattoos, being yourself, like that must feel really good.
Yeah, it does. At the same time, I feel like my brand of weird isn't weird anymore, like I feel like and I do miss the I guess the times where it was weird. And interestingly enough, I remember going shopping and being treated completely different because I was fully tattooed and had like a Julia Roberts Pretty Woman moment. And then like and then obviously the TV shows come out and everybody's like, they just want to talk to you now, they think like, oh, it's so cool you have a tattoo, like my grandma has one too, And so then this last year, I decided to start blacking out all my tattoos because granted, a lot of them were just really terrible. And I think people don't realize that most good tattooers have like terrible tattoos. And, it's like years of just accumulating crap and lasering and trying to cover. And it was just like, I just want to have a clean slate. And so I found this really amazing blackout tattoo artist from Pennsylvania who would fly out and tattoo me. And I remember I posted a picture of my arm and people lost their minds. They were like, why would you do that to yourself? And I was like, wow, I feel like I'm 16 again.
I'm still a rebel.
Yeah.
What tattoo, are there any specific tattoos that you really were just like, for whatever reason, whether because it's associated with a bad memory or just because you're like aesthetically, vibe?
Like, I'm really proud of my sobriety. I've been sober for 14 years. I turned 14 in July. And so, I had vodka forever tattooed on my hand. Like I didn't even used to drink vodka. I drank tequila. Like it makes no sense. So it's like things like that. I had like a lot of occult like tattoos that I just don't really, that was a part of my life that I've definitely stepped away from and grown as an individual. And I just like, I just didn't want to look at them anymore. And it wasn't like, it's weird because people are like, don't get your boyfriend's name, it's a curse. And I have like tons of those. Those don't bother me really. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. That guy was not cool or whatever. But I think it's more when it's like things that they just don't align with your values anymore, And I think I have grown up a lot.
Is there
as cheesy as it sounds.
Is there any tattoo that you actually really genuinely regret? This is why I actually have no tattoos.
Yeah,
it's not because I'm against
you're
them.
The new rebel.
Yeah, people are always really surprised when they find I have no tattoos. But
yeah,
it's really because it's not because I'm against tattoos at all.
Yeah,
it's because I was indecisive and I was always afraid I would pick something that in the moment felt like a good idea. And
yeah,
then,
sure.
10, 20 years, 5 years later, I'm like, why is this on me? Is there any tattoo that you have felt that way about?
No, I mean, no, I don't have any regrets. I mean, I just think there's just some stuff I just don't like to look at. And also like tattooing has gotten so much better now. So it's like, I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's not very good, is it?
Do you still,
but that's okay. We live and learn.
Do you still actively tattoo? You got so many, things going on. Do you still actually take clients?
Yeah. I mean, I still tattoo. I tattoo at my shop in West Hollywood, but right now, because I've been focusing on the album release, I've just dedicated all that time. And once I start touring, I definitely will have to take a break until I come back. So right now I've been finishing up a lot of the projects that clients that I've started, and I want them to, have a finished piece.
well, going back to the album, as I mentioned, there were, certain artists and songs that when I was growing up, spoke to me and kind of made me feel seen or heard or whatever, even if, my parents didn't understand or they
totally.
What songs, I mean, like I said, there's all these themes on the album about doubting oneself. And, I imagine that there's a lot of songs on this record that might do that for your young fans. Are there specific songs that when you're trying to give this message that it is okay to be
Yeah,
being
yeah.
weird,
Well, you know,
basically.
it's like, I mean, the album I always say is like, it's like anthems for the hopeless and the hopeful romantics, because I think even though there is a sense of doom and gloom, there's still like a sliver of hope. And that's something that I would hope everybody would hold on to. I've been burned by a lot of guys, not a lot, I haven't dated that many people, but like, I've had my share of betrayal and hurt, and I'm so glad that I didn't hold on to that, and that I still held out for like the right person, because it would be so unfair to punish somebody else for somebody else's actions. And I don't, like I said, I don't want to be bitter, I don't. And I hope that like regardless of what type of uh failures you might experience in your relationships, that like you still hold on to whatever ideal you have of what true love should be. I think we're in a time right now where like the idea of true love is destroyed. We cheapen everything, everybody's disposable, everybody's attention span is non-existent, and we live our life through our phone most of the time. And I can only imagine how difficult it must be to really feel connected to people right now, surprisingly, with all the social media that we have.
Hmm.
But to connect on a deeper level. And I hope that people don't lose sight of that. And I don't want to sound like, well, back in my day, but I think that's like some ideals that I hope people don't let go of.
How old is your son?
My son is going to be 3 in November.
Okay, so it's not a concern you have at the moment. I assume he doesn't have a phone or anything, but like,
Yeah, we're going to try and go until he's 15. That's our goal.
well, but I did want to ask, what are your concerns about raising a child in this digital social media heavy, age
Yeah.
where things can get pretty hateful sometimes?
Yeah, and awful too. I mean, I think the content out there is pretty gross. A lot of things I see people post, even my own friends, are guilty of it. But I think like we want to hold out on handing him that type of technology for as long as we can. And we also do feel like we have outgrown LA in a lot of ways. Now having a kid, that's something I never imagined. I never thought I was going to be a mom, and never planned on it, and then I fell in love with my husband, and he wanted to have 6 kids, and I was like, the compromise is one, you get one.
It's
Um,
fair.
yeah. And so we have like recently purchased some land out in kind of the middle of nowhere in Indiana, and it's just surrounded by acres of forest and in a very small tiny town. And we're excited about eventually starting to spend a lot more time out there, especially for Leofar, our son. Like, I want him to have a sense of nature versus right now we live in Hollywood. It's like not, to me, not the ideal place to bring our son up. Like, I want him to, I don't want his sense of nature to be something he just sees in pictures.
Well, going back to the positive side of social media.
Yeah.
One more question I have, not about the content itself, but
Yeah.
when you posted that thing about your ordeal at the Provo Canyon School, which, like I said,
Mhm.
it was very
Yeah.
lengthy, it was very brave. What was the response you got? Did you get a lot of response from people who've been through similar
Yeah. I
things?
mean, unfortunately, there was such a huge response of people who have either been to the same school or one similar to, because there's many of them. I think there's thousands in the US, and that follow that same type of structure. And um, you know, crazy enough, I was able to connect with one of the girls that I was locked up in there with, and to catch up with her, we were like, oh, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And she was saying some things that really brought back a lot of memories that have obviously been blocked out, or I mean, not blocked out, that I just don't think about. And yeah, I mean, I've gone to years of therapy after that to like try and you know fix a lot of the damage that was done, but I feel like I came out a lot more unscathed than a lot of people that was out there. But yeah, it was pretty disheartening to see other people having gone through the same thing. At the same time, like you said, the beautiful part of social media is that you can more easily connect with people that have experienced such a weird and um it doesn't feel like it's a normal thing to have to go through. um like, that's all thanks to that.
I mean, I do think actually, but like things like you, Paris Hilton, other people kind of coming out, I think that has changed, because I remember it was like Dr.
Yeah.
Phil or those type of shows. They would have like teens going to boot camp, and like the audience, when like the military guy would come out to take the teen, like they were all like on the side of the military guy. They were all like, yeah, you incorrigible kid, you're gonna get
Yeah.
your ass whooped. I feel like people are more empathetic now to this is not the way to parent.
Yeah, of course. Well, and I think too, it's I mean, like Provo Canyon School in particular, that's really all I can speak to. Although I know there are some even more horrible places that are even more cruel. They don't show you that side though. You know, they just show you like, hey, we're gonna help and fix your kid, and then you go to the website and there's this really pretty photo of like the outside of a school. Which, by the way, you're never in that school. You're in like an actual like cell unit away from that area. You know, we never actually went in those places. So I think that like they sell you on this, they sell parents who are already scared on this fake solution. And it's not like they're gonna tell you, hey, we're gonna abuse your child now. You know, like that's not what your most parents would sign up for. So I think it's much more deceitful because these industries kind of prey on like the fear. So yeah, I think most people, if they saw what goes on behind closed doors, would not be cheering it on, you know.
Yeah.
You know, military boot camp sounds a lot more reasonable than what goes on behind those curtains.
I'm curious that now you're a mom. You said that you have written down a list of things to do or not
Not to
do
do,
based
yeah.
on, your own experience as a
Yeah,
child. What's on that list? What life lessons do you have that you could tell other moms watching this?
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think my parents had a really hard time. It sounds so silly and simple, but it's just communicating. Like my parents didn't talk. They never really asked me how I was doing, like, and really mean it. You know, like when I started to look different, for example, like I think a conversation with me would have helped them understand what I was processing versus just saying, "Oh no, like we need to fix this," you know. And so I always want to be more open with my son that way. I'm not trying to be his best friend because I'm still his mother, but like I do want to be a safe place for him to go to, which I never felt. I never had that in my family. Like I never had a safe place. Like I always felt if you go into this door, it's going to be one type of bad, and then that door will be another type of bad, you know. So I was
Oh
just like,
wow.
I got to get out of here.
But
But
your relationship with your parents now is they
I
must
don't.
be proud of you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I think. Yeah, my mom and we've definitely bonded a lot over once I got pregnant, you know, because like I'm giving them their only grandchild basically. But yeah, they're totally proud of me. I mean, they still think I'm crazy, but that's okay.
That's quite all right. Has any of the stuff we're talking about, the childhood stuff, or are there any songs on the album Love Made Me Do It that are specifically
Nah,
about
I
any
would,
of that?
it's like that stuff doesn't inspire me, you know? I mean, I think if I sat down and really focused, I could probably figure out a cool way of expressing those feelings. But yeah, I don't know. And it's funny because Love Made Me Do It was about, somebody that I had dated when I was younger, but now we're already starting to write album number two. And, I'm still like high on my husband, and I still I'm still high on love. And so I think, I don't know. I'm sure there's other important topics I could sing about, and maybe I will explore those. But yeah, I think I still think there's a lot of romantic notes I want to hit.
Well, see, there's this kind of stereotype or cliche, which for some artists is totally true, that they write their best music from places of darkness or depression
Yeah,
or anger. And
yeah,
when they are happy and complacent with their life,
but it sucks.
they're creatively stagnant. Yeah, the people will make jokes. Oh, they made better music when they were on drugs or when they were
Yeah, yeah.
before they got married or whatever. So like, where do you write is that a concern? Like if you're happy, what do you write about?
I don't know. Nick Cave seems pretty stable and happy, and he's continuing to write really great music. So I can't, you can't use that excuse. They can't be like, oh, I have writer's block because something, I don't have any PTSD concerning this. But the thing is like I'm happily married. We have our own days as well, and I think that there's other, we're still growing together, and it's like, I don't know how to write a happy song, so that's not, what I intend on writing. I think you can always look at things in different perspectives. And I personally, as somebody who was on drugs and drinking at one point in my life, I definitely am far more productive now. And the more stable I become, better my work is. But
Awesome.
that's just
So
me.
no, that makes, I mean, people will make jokes. So like, whatever. Aerosmith were better when they were all on
Yeah.
drugs or like, but obviously, you know, it's not really always true that like
No, yeah,
it's being stable should not be
yeah,
underrated at all.
yeah.
Did you ever expect this would be the life you'd have, that you'd be in this place, you know, married, mom, entrepreneur, all this? Did you envision this for yourself?
No, I mean, I think no, I didn't. I wasn't like, I'm gonna go to America and I'm gonna do all this. No, I just, as like one step at a time, I would just like I would discover things and I gravitate towards things and I would just make them as the best that I could possibly make them. But I mean, I definitely, I posted a picture of, we have like a red pool in the back, and I posted a picture of my son uh, jumping into it the other day, and somebody wrote back, do you feel like you're living in a dream? And I do. Every day is a dream, and every day it's like I'm one of those people that like not one day goes by that I'm not like, this is amazing, and I'm so grateful, because I come from a country that does not give you all the opportunities that this country does. And so, not just, I love Mexico very much so, but like my childhood was like living in a building with no electricity or running water and packed dirt floors as our floors. It's a much different world, and there was some beauty to the simplicity, but but there's no beauty to like needless suffering either, so I'm very grateful every day for my life. I like, my husband's awesome, my kid is beautiful and healthy, and I get to like sing for people. That's pretty awesome. I don't know what else I could ask for.
It's very awesome. You are the embodiment of the American dream in many ways.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Very cool. I'm happy for you. I'm excited for this album to come out. I'm excited for the other music that's coming out. It seems like you're already thinking about album number 2. Do you think it's going to come out relatively soon? Are you on a roll now?
Yeah. Actually, Greg and we've already started sketching out a few ideas for some songs. I'm doing a collaboration with Charo, actually. We're doing, I know, I'm like I'm her biggest fan. So she's an amazing guitarist, by the way. She like rips. A lot of people know her because she's on the Love Boat, or because she's super hot or whatever. But she's actually one of the most talented musicians I know. And so we've become quite close over the last 2 years, and I was like, we need to make some music together. So there's actually a Spanish song that we want to cover. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's crazy.
I can't wait for the music video for that, because I want to see, everyone sees Charo in pink sequins. I was like, imagine her in a goth version of Charo. Yes, that's what I want to see.
Oh my God, this will be so epic. I cannot wait
yes
for that to come out. And she's like a flamenco guitarist.
Yeah. She's flamenco. She's like, she's classically trained as well. She also dances, and she actually has a really great voice as well.
So you definitely, I can't think of a more diverse artist who's worked with Peter Murphy and Charo.
Yeah.
If you ever get the 3 of you on the same stage together,
oh my God, I would love that.
But until then, I'm looking forward to the album Love Made Me Do It. And I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you.
Oh, me
so much
too,
for
man.
your
Thank
time.
you.